Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
China placed a city of 4 million under lockdown on Tuesday in a bid to stamp out a domestic coronavirus spike, with residents told not to leave their homes except in emergencies.
President Duterte emphasized the need to ramp up the vaccination rate in various local government units, or LGUs, to meet the country's target to fully vaccinate at least 15 million Filipinos to achieve population protection by December this year.
Myanmar's junta boycotted a Southeast Asian summit after its chief was banned from the event, deepening the regime's isolation 9 months after it took power in a bloody coup.
And Tiffany Alisasis takes U.S. beyond Van Gogh when the traveling art exhibition made its stop in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Before we go to the pandemic news, this just in, police in central China were hunting for a man who killed 7 people, including a village Communist Party chief, before jumping off a bridge. Take a look. The suspect, surnamed Gao, stabbed to death a family of 5, including 2 children in Wuhan on Sunday, according to the city's police force in a statement on its official Weibo microblog. He fatally wounded a passerby and a cab driver while trying to steal a car to escape, saying he then jumped off a bridge over the Yangtze River early Monday morning. The force did not say whether the man was thought to have survived the jump. The party chief of Shaoxi Township, his wife, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren were among those stabbed to death, according to state-run news site China.org. Another wounded child found that the scene was still alive and rushed to hospital. Police said they were still investigating. China doesn't allow civilians to carry guns, and many violent crimes in recent decades have involved knives.
Staying in China, where a city of 4 million is now under lockdown on Tuesday in a bid to stamp out a domestic coronavirus spike, with residents told not to leave home except in emergencies. Residents of Lanzhou will be required to stay at home, according to authorities in a statement. Officials added the entry and exit of residents would be strictly controlled and limited to essential supplies or medical treatment. China's latest outbreak has been linked to the contagious Delta variant, with a tally from the latest spread hitting 198 cases since October 17. Health officials have warned that more infections may emerge as testing is ramped up in the coming days to fight the outbreak, which has been linked to a group of domestic tourists. Mass testing is underway in 11 provinces, where authorities have suspended interprovincial tour groups in 5 areas where cases have been detected, including Beijing.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong will tighten coronavirus travel restrictions to bring it more into line with the Chinese mainland, according to its leader today, as the city extended its streak of more than 2 months without a major local outbreak. The announcement came despite concerns from the international hub's business community that the city remains indefinitely cut off from the rest of the world, with one of the strictest mandatory quarantine regimes of any jurisdiction. Take a look.
We are caught in a sort of a dilemma because in order to resume some quarantine-free travel with the mainland, we have to ensure that our anti-COVID-19 practices are more in line with the mainland practices. so that the mainland authorities will have the level of confidence to enable Hong Kong people to go into the mainland without being subject to the 14-day plus 7-day quarantine. As Hong Kong's primary advantage lies in being the gateway to the mainland of China. If businesses established in Hong Kong could not go into the mainland, I think it will significantly reduce the attraction of Hong Kong as an international business hub and an international financial center.
Most arrivals have to undergo 14 to 21 days of hotel quarantine. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said Hong Kong will now go even further as she tries to persuade China's leaders to restore travel with the mainland. Lam has previously described reopening to the mainland as more important than restoring Hong Kong's international travel links. Hong Kong's business community has looked on with growing exasperation as rival finance hubs such as Singapore, Tokyo, London, and New York reopen. On Monday, the top lobby group for financial firms warned that Lam's decision to pursue a zero COVID strategy and keep the city cut off was hammering its long-term prospects as a business hub. But there's little sign of change on the horizon.
To the Philippines now, where President Duterte emphasized the need to ramp up the vaccination rate in various local government units, or LGUs, to meet the country's target to fully vaccinate at least 50 million Filipinos to achieve population protection by December this year. He said the vaccination program should also scale up even in the far-flung communities. Take a look.
I urge LGUs to come up with a more systematic and efficient way of finding out who among your constituents have not yet vaccinated. Please do everything to convince them to get vaccinated. I'd like to appeal to the mayors and the barangay captains na magpasya lang siya ng kalahating araw. Tanungin niya kung sino pang hindi nabakunahan. At sabihin niya na kung merong scheduled na bakuna.
The president assured that the country has enough supply of COVID-19 vaccines. As of October 24, the country has received a total of 97,678,340 doses of COVID-19 vaccines.
Meanwhile, President Duterte also said he is most eager to answer the legality of his order prohibiting executive branch officials, particularly cabinet members, from attending the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings on the alleged overpriced procurement of medical supplies against COVID-19. During the pre-recorded Talk to the People aired Monday night, the president welcomed the move of the Senate Blue Ribbons panel to challenge before the Supreme Court the legality of his order. The president said his disagreement with the Senate Blue Ribbon panel may be settled in the Supreme Court.
If you remember, I have a memorandum prohibiting the cabinet members and other executive officials appearing in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing without my permission. At last, the members of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee have finally seen the light. We welcome this move of bringing the legality of the memorandum to the Supreme Court. And we would like to congratulate the members for realizing, albeit late, even late, that it is the court which should eventually decide on the constitutionality of the order, and we will defend it. But we are not saying that we are the best mind here. It's a question of law, an issue of law, and it could either go either way. Supreme Court, dalhin mo doon kasi doon talaga magtapos itong my disagreement with the Blue Ribbon Committee, because of their behavior and the way they treated. Ang sabi ko nga naman, you crumple, durugin na ninyo yung parmalin, pero yung mga tao ko sa gobyerno, yung ipinapatawag ninyo at pahintayin ninyo ng ilang oras at hindi naman ninyo tatawagin at kung nandoon, iniinsulto ninyo, para bang walang alam mga muron ang kaharap ninyo, sabi you're impertinent. Ito dapat si Gordo, maglipat siya sa judiciary. Yung ugali na yan. This is not feudal times. You have to be courteous. If you want to be treated with courtesy, you have to practice it. Pero I will not allow you to shout out at me. Hindi ako papayag ng ganun.
U.S. biotech firm Moderna said Monday its COVID vaccine was safe and produced a strong immune response in children aged 6 to 11, adding it would submit trial data to global regulators soon. The news comes as a panel of government advisors was preparing to meet Tuesday on the question of whether to authorize the Pfizer vaccine in kids aged 5 to 11, with top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci predicting it would be available by mid-November. An interim analysis from a mid to late stage clinical trial of 4,753 children showed 2 doses of vaccine produced a high level of neutralizing antibodies, Y-shaped proteins that bind to the coronavirus and block it from entering human cells. That comes as FDA advisors prepare to meet Tuesday to discuss Pfizer COVID vaccines for kids.
Meanwhile, back here in the country, the government targets to complete the vaccination of at least 90% of teachers, students, and other educational personnel against the COVID-19 by the end of November. Secretary Cardito Galvez Jr., Chief of the National Task Force, or NTF, against COVID-19 said this is part of the government's preparation to ensure a safe learning during the gradual reopening of face-to-face classes amid the pandemic. Citing data from Commission of Higher Education, or CHED Chairperson Prospero de Vera, Galvez reported that only 57% of teachers and students were vaccinated against COVID-19, pushing the government to further scale up the vaccination drive for the education sector. Anticipating expanded face-to-face classes, de Vera earlier urged college students to get inoculated against the COVID-19. Meanwhile, Galvez described the vaccination of minors ages 12 to 17 as an instrumental tool for the opening of face-to-face classes and ancillary businesses related to the education sector.
Vaccine-reluctant New York firefighters took to the streets Monday to demonstrate against the city's requirement that they get inoculated against COVID-19 or risk losing their jobs. Several thousand municipal workers, mostly firefighters, marched across the Brooklyn Bridge to City Hall in Manhattan, carrying placards that read, "Do we ask your vaccine status when you call 911?" and "Essential yesterday, unemployed today." Democratic Mayor Bill de Blasio announced last week that all public employees, including police officers and firefighters, will have to get vaccinated by November 1st, or they will be placed on unpaid leave until they can provide proof of a shot. They will not have the option of providing a negative test instead, but medical and religious exemptions will be allowed. As an incentive, New York City employees will receive an extra $500 in their paycheck if they get vaccinated by October 29th. De Blasio's order essentially extended a vaccine mandate for public sector teachers and healthcare workers to cover the city's remaining 160,000 employees, 46,000 of whom had not been inoculated as of last week. Also Monday, the Police Benevolent Association, New York's largest union representing police officers, filed a lawsuit challenging that mandate.
Meanwhile, Singapore will allow quarantine-free travel for vaccinated travelers from Australia and Switzerland from next month, according to officials, adding to a list of 10 other countries, including the U.S. and several other European nations. The business hub is easing travel curbs and shifting to a strategy of living with COVID-19 to revive its economy, despite suffering its worst coronavirus wave yet, with the healthcare system under strain. It's important that we persevere with efforts to reopen borders with essential public health safeguards in place to remain an international aviation and business hub with global connectivity, according to Transport Minister S. Iswaran. Starting November 6, fully vaccinated travelers from Switzerland and Australia who test negative for COVID-19 before they depart and when they arrive will be able to bypass quarantine. Business travelers and students from Singapore are expected to be able to travel to Australia under the initiative once Canberra finalizes arrangements. Australia's borders have been largely closed for the last 19 months to prevent the spread of the virus, although Prime Minister Scott Morrison said this month that the country will begin to reopen them in November. The expansion of the scheme will allow up to 4,000 people to enter Singapore daily through the travel lanes, an increase of 1,000 from current numbers. South Korea is also due to be added to the initiative from November 15.
COVID vaccine requirements taking effect next month for people entering the United States by air will not apply to children. A senior U.S. official said that on Monday. For children under 18, there is a uniform exemption from that vaccination requirement. The senior official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, told reporters 2 weeks ahead of the reopening of U.S. borders to much of the world. The Biden administration announced earlier this month that land and air borders will reopen on November 8 to foreign visitors who have been fully vaccinated. This ends a more than 18-month suspension of travel from much of the globe, including close allies and trade partners like Canada and Western Europe. The vaccination requirement does not apply to U.S. citizens and immigrants. The official said the under 18 exemption reflected the fact that in many countries, coronavirus vaccines have not been authorized or made available for minors. Also exempted will be travelers from countries with a lower than 10% vaccination rate due to lack of availability, which is the case across much of Africa and other large parts of the world. However, all travelers, regardless of citizenship or vaccination status, will have to show proof of a negative coronavirus test.
Back here in the country, the Opta Research Group on Tuesday said the National Capital Region, or NCR, is now classified as low risk for COVID-19 based on metrics. In its latest report, the group noted that the positivity rate in the NCR decreased to 6%, while its average daily attack rate, or ADAR, decreased to less than 7%, or 7 per 100,000, 7 for 100,000 population. It said the 7-day average decreased to 901 from 1,405 the previous week. HCUR, or healthcare utilization rate in the NCR, decreased to 35%, while ICU utilization was at 46%. The local government units, which are classified as low risk, include Navotas, Malabon, Caloocan, Pateros, Muntinlupa, Las Piñas, Manila, Quezon City, Taguig, Marikina, Makati, Pasay, Parañaque, and Pasig. However, there are 3 LGUs that are classified as moderate risk due to their above 10 per 100,000 ADAR, which is Mandaluyong, San Juan, and Valenzuela.
Japan's Princess Mako married her university sweetheart, a commoner, thus losing royal status. We got Dennis Liu telling us more about that story. Dennis.
Japan's Princess Mako married her university sweetheart on Tuesday, but it was a low-key union bereft of traditional rituals, with the couple voicing sadness over the controversy that haunted their engagement. Under the rules of the imperial family, Emperor Naruhito's 30-year-old niece, Mako, gave up her royal title as she wed Kei Komuro, who is the same age and works for a U.S. law firm. After the marriage was registered, she told reporters that for her, Kei is irreplaceable and that their marriage is a necessary step for them to be able to protect their hearts. Since announcing their engagement in 2017, the couple has faced tabloid scandals and vicious online sniping over allegations that Komuro's family had run into financial difficulties. After much delay, they finally tied the knot with no wedding ceremony, reception banquet, or any of the usual rites, opting to do so privately away from a public that has not always been kind.
絶対反対ですね。それは絶対反対です。やっぱり眞子さまにはお幸せになっていただきたい。添い遂げていただきたいなってそう思います。お幸せになっていただくことが一番この先そう思います。3年間っていう期間はね長いものになったんじゃないかなというふうにはね思うんですけどね。なんかこの日が迎えることができて。良かったなって思いますね。
もっと祝福できるような形の方が本来は良かったのになんとなく雰囲気が、ね、なんかきついような状態になったのがやっぱりちょっと寂しいというか残念やったかなという感じは正直思ってますね。
メディアの方の騒ぎ方も普通じゃなかったと思いますし、そういう意味ではちょっとかわいそうなのかなと思いますけど、やっぱ東京来てみてこのやっぱ日本をこう支える象徴的な立場っているそういうことを考えるとやっぱ公の人なんですねって。
Mako also turned down a large payment usually offered to royal women on their departure, reportedly up to 153 million yen or 1.35 million US dollars, and they are now said to be planning a move to the United States. Royals are held to exacting standards in Japan, and Mako has developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder because of the media attention, according to the Imperial Household Agency. Women in the imperial family cannot ascend the chrysanthemum throne and lose their royal status when they marry a commoner. Their reported plan to move to the U.S., where Komuro works, has drawn inevitable comparisons with another royal couple who faced a media onslaught, Britain's Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. It is not clear if Mako will work, but she is well qualified. She studied art and cultural heritage at Tokyo's International Christian University. She also holds a master's degree from Britain's University of Leicester. The Japanese throne can pass only to male members of the family, and the children of female royals who marry commoners are not included. There has been some debate over changing the rules, and a government panel in July compiled notes on the issue, including a proposal that royal women stay in the family even after marriage. That is the latest for now. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
We go now to Afghanistan in the Baghdad province. Drought and extreme poverty led to a heartbreaking trade of girls, and some of them are only 1.5 to 6 years old, and they are sold for $500 to $3,000 US. Take a look.
دا غزما لور د اتو کال انجلې د 3 لک روپۍ ما د مجبورې ورکړې د بلجو د پرولو د لاس نن سبا چې غاله کراسي برته زما څخه بیا د دونی کا کنجلې ما د مجبورې ورکړې دا خو نو شکر نه و چې ما د دونی کا کنجلې ورکړې وای خدای رسول خدای نه وای چې دونی کا کنجلې واخې ته خرڅ کړي
دو تا دختر خو فروختم، یک 10 ساله، یک 9 ساله، یکی هیدگوله، یک سیامویه. او هیدگول که آب کمریه، سیاموی هم در وبه. از دیست همین بدبختی و گوشنگی و لقی و پریشانی که همین کم بوده، من همین تو پریشانی و همین بدبختی ها در سر ما آمده.
The assistant director who handed Alec Baldwin the loaded weapon that killed a cinematographer had been sacked from a previous production for gun safety violations, according to the company on Monday. A producer for the Asean released a movie told AFP that Dave Holtz was fired from the set of Freedom's Path in 2019 after a crew member incurred a minor and temporary injury when a gun was unexpectedly discharged. He said Holtz was removed from set immediately after the prop gun discharged. Production did not resume filming until Dave was off-site. An incident report was taken and filed at that time. Attention has focused on Holtz and 24-year-old armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed in the wake of the tragedy on the set near Santa Fe, New Mexico. An armorer is tasked with supplying and keeping weapons safe on set, ensuring that they are accounted for at all times and locked away when not in use. But entertainment trade website The Wrap reported Monday that crew members had been using the weapons just hours before Helena Hutchins was killed. Hutchins was killed Thursday on the set of low-budget Western Rust when Baldwin fired a weapon that assistant director Dave Holtz had told him was safe, using the industry lingo, cold gun.
Staying in the U.S., 2 people were killed Monday and 4 others were injured, including a police officer, when a gunman opened fire in a shopping mall in the U.S. state of Idaho. Now, police envoys were called to the mall with reports that at least 1 person was shot and down, according to the city's police chief, Ryan Lee. He exchanged fire with a man matching the description 911 callers had given, with 1 officer being hit. Lee said a suspect was taken into custody and there's no ongoing threat or danger to the community at large from the incident. The New York Times reported the 2-story Boys Town Square Mall is made up of more than 150 stores and restaurants. Mass shooting and other gun violence are huge problems in the U.S., issues that gun control advocates say are fueled by the prevalence of firearms and relatively lax gun laws.
Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Makabuluhang talakayan.
Sapat na po ba yun? Papasok yung 30% sa indoor, 50% sa outdoor, para to even break even?
Ilan pong mga negosyo ang nagsara po dahil dito po sa pandemya?
Malalim na komentaryo.
Ngayon, sinasabi essential goods and services. Pero nakita naman po natin sa Dolomite Beach.
At may time clock.
Yung mga bata doon.
Umaapaw sa impormasyon.
Ano ba ngayon ang allotted budget per voter?
Yung hindi daw bakunado po ng mga empleyado, hindi sila pinapasweldo. Oras!
Pero hindi rin nagpapahuli sa kakulitan.
Merong nag-file for the presidency. Hinimok daw siya ng mga alien at ang kanyang plataforma po ay palakasin ang Wi-Fi.
At ito si Ali magde-demonstrate paano mag-swimming na may face mask.
Kaya, nood na kina Ali Soto at Pati Daza sa ASPN Ano sa palagay nyo?
Kung kayo po ay may pinagdadaanan, daanan nyo lang. Huwag niyong tambayan.
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga.
Oras, alas 9:26 na po ng umaga. At nagbabalik po ang ASPS.
Mapapanood sa Net25 at mapapakinggan sa DZEC, Radyo Aguila at Eagle FM 95.5.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Let's go! Samut-saring mga videos ang ating nakikita. Iba't ibang eksena lalo na sa social media. May nakakalokang video, may nakakatawang video, may nakakamanghang video. Sa finest na kaboy video, may nakakaaliw na video, may pang-asar na video, may trending at viral video. Sa finest na kaboy video. Finest na kaboy video.
Welcome back to the news. Myanmar's junta boycotted a Southeast Asian summit Tuesday after its chief was banned from the event, deepening the regime's isolation 9 months after it took power in a bloody coup. The virtual gathering kicked off 3 days of meetings hosted by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or Asean, with U.S. President Joe Biden, as well as Chinese and Russian leaders set to attend. Myanmar topped the agenda of Tuesday's talks between regional leaders, with the country still in chaos following February's military takeover and the subsequent deadly crackdown on dissent. Min Aung Hlaing's exclusion from the Southeast Asian Summit was unprecedented snub from an organization often criticized for being toothless. The junta slammed the decision as a breach of the bloc's policy of non-interference in member states' affairs. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore, among several ASEAN states that have spoken out strongly against the coup, lamented that progress has been slow following the Myanmar coup. A draft summit statement by the meeting's chair, seen by AFP, expressed concern and called on all parties concerned in Myanmar to implement their commitment to the 5-point consensus. The 5-point consensus is the plan drawn up by ASEAN to defuse the crisis.
Meanwhile, President Duterte will virtually participate in the ASEAN Leaders Summit this week. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque confirmed that the president will be attending a series of events. Take a look.
ASEAN +3 East Asia. At dadalo po ang ating presidente via Zoom or computer hookup from October 26 to 28. No? So as usual po, regular naman po itong mga ASEAN Summit. Uunahin muna po yung ASEAN Summit, tapos magkakaroon ng ASEAN Korea, ASEAN China, ASEAN US, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN Australia, ASEAN +3, East Asia Summit, ASEAN India, ASEAN Russia, tapos yung closing ceremony.
The 38th and 39th ASEAN Summits and related summits with the theme, We Care, We Prepare, We Prosper, will be hosted by Brunei Darussalam through virtual video conferences due to the pandemic.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced on Monday that he named Singaporean sociologist Noelian Hazer as the new special envoy to Myanmar. She will replace Christine Schreiner-Bergener of Switzerland. Hazer, 73, has held multiple senior positions at the United Nations, in particular between 2007 and 2014 as the head of an Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Between 2013 and 2015, she served as special advisor for East Timor. As part of her duties at the Economic and Social Commission, Hazer worked closely with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or Asean, as well as with Myanmar authorities on the development of and reduction of poverty. Since the February 1st coup in Myanmar that put an end to a 10-year democratic period, the United Nations and the ASEAN have unsuccessfully urged the military junta to relaunch a political dialogue and liberate civilian officials arrested during the putsch.
Meanwhile, Brunei's head of state, Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah, opened the Association of Southeast Asian, or ASEAN Summit today as member nation Myanmar stayed out of this year's talks after its junta chief was banned from the event. Let's listen in.
This year, ASEAN has made good progress in advancing our community building efforts, while at the same time combating the COVID-19 pandemic. I look forward to hearing colleagues' views which will guide us in identifying measures towards realizing the ASEAN Community Vision 2025. This year, we have made significant progress in strengthening our cooperation with external partners. Our work with them has greatly expanded, especially as we collectively address COVID-19 and prepare our community for the future. Through this, we have learned that the ASEAN-led processes continue to be the best way for us to effectively address issues of common concern. We must therefore ensure that the ASEAN regional architecture remains inclusive and relevant.
Sudanese residents from the capital, Khartoum, call for the return of a civilian government and reject the statement given by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, where he declared a state of emergency and dissolved the authorities leading the country's democratic transition. Now watch this.
رابعا حل مجلس السيادة الانتقالي وإعفاء أعضائه. خامسا حل مجلس الوزراء. سادسا إنهاء تكليف ولاة الولايات.
البيان بكل ما يحتوي مرفوض تماما. مطلوب حكومة مدنية، حل المجلس العسكري، ما في أي تفاوض مع العساكر حتى بعد تسقط تاني إن شاء الله بإذن واحد الأحد. الشعب عنيد والشعب صابر والشعب مصندد على إنه الحكومة لازم ترجع مدنية.
ده بيان هزيل ولا بيعني اي حاجه للشعب السوداني. لو ذاعوا البرهان ولو ذاعوا عبد الزنبار، الشعب السوداني حدد موقفه من اي حكم عسكري.
The United States on Monday suspended $700 million in aid to Sudan after a military takeover and urged the immediate restoration of a civilian government. Take a look.
In light of these developments, the United States is pausing assistance from the $700 million in emergency assistance appropriations of economic support funds for Sudan. Those funds were intended to support the country's democratic transition as we evaluate the next step for Sudan programming. The United States condemns the actions taken overnight by Sudanese military forces. The arrest of civilian government officials and other political leaders, including Prime Minister Hamdok, undermines the country's transition to democratic civilian rule. The civilian-led transitional government should be immediately restored.
شير يا جماعة، شير رجاء، شير لاستمرار اللايف يا جماعة، رجاء وليس أمرا، رجاء يا جماعة، رجاء.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison announces a much-delayed pledge to meet 2050 net zero emissions target ahead of a landmark UN climate summit. Take a look.
We know we can't let the changes that are happening around the world just happen to Australia. We know we can't pretend it's not happening, the changes that are occurring around the world, just as we haven't been pretending in the actions that both the government has been taking and, most importantly, Australians have been taking. Our plan is a fair plan. It's a practical plan. It's a responsible plan. Our plan for net zero by 2050 is the plan that I believe Australians want, because it gets it right.
Widely seen as a climate laggard, Australia is one of the world's largest coal and gas exporters, and its conservative government has resisted climate action for most of its 8-year term. A 2021 poll by the Lowy Institute think tank found 78% of Australians back a 2050 net zero target, while 63% support a national ban on new coal mines. The country's greatest natural tourist draw card, the Great Barrier Reef, has been badly damaged by waves of mass coral bleaching as ocean temperatures rise.
Meanwhile, the head of the annual UN Climate Change Conference, or COP26, the World Meteorological Organization, on Monday warned that the world is way off track in containing global temperature rise, with the concentration of carbon dioxide, or CO2, the most important greenhouse gas, reaching 413.2 parts per million in 2020. Take a look.
We have again broken records in main three greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And this negative trend that we have been observing already for decades has continued also this year.
We need to mitigate emissions. There is no way around it. We need to reduce emissions as fast as possible. When countries are taking commitments to be carbon neutral, atmosphere gives us a very clear signal that our commitments should be converted into something which we can see in the atmosphere. If we don't see our, let's say, at least the decreasing growth rate of the major greenhouse gases, we cannot actually declare the success in climate agenda. And we are making measurements and we are providing objective information on what is going on in the atmosphere. So commitments should be followed by the actions.
We have already seen some alarming indications that, for example, the Amazonian rainforest ecosystem, which used to be a major sink of carbon, has become now a source of carbon, which is alarming. And this is related to deforestation in the area, and also changes in local climate because of this deforestation, and also higher temperatures, which are favoring evaporation. It's clear from science that these concentrations of greenhouse gases, they're driving climate change, and if we are able to mitigate those emissions, we could phase out the negative trend in climate around 2060s. So that's our aim. But we have also some parameters and some features that will continue for even hundreds of years, and that means the melting of snow and ice and melting of glaciers and related sea level rise. So we have already reached such a high concentration of carbon dioxide that the problem doesn't go away fairly soon. We have all the technical means to convert our energy systems, transport systems, and most of the industry systems to become climate friendly, and also we have the financial resources to reach that. But so far, the progress has been too slow.
Asia suffered its hottest year on record in 2020, according to the United Nations on Tuesday, ahead of the COP26 summit, with extreme weather taking a heavy toll on the continent's development. Now, in its annual State of the Climate in Asia report, the UN's World Meteorological Organization said every part of the region had been affected. The WMO said extreme weather and climate change impacts across Asia in 2020 caused the loss of life of thousands of people, displaced millions of others, and cost hundreds of billions of dollars, while wreaking a heavy toll on infrastructure and ecosystems. Sustainable development is threatened, with food and water insecurity, health risks, and environmental degradation on the rise. Increased heat and humidity are forecast to lead to an effective loss of outdoor working hours across the continent, with a potential cost of many billions of dollars.
Tiffany Alisasas takes us beyond Van Gogh when the traveling art exhibition made its stop in Calgary, Alberta. Let's take a look.
We are here at the BMO Center located in Calgary, Alberta. We are about to immerse ourselves into Vincent van Gogh's artwork. So let's go check it out. Beyond Van Gogh breaks the confines of the frame and allows the spectator to be fully immersed in a world larger than life, where one can virtually feel the paint being applied to the digital canvas. This exhibition also embraces the freedom of exploring many different themes of his artwork. So let's get to know a little bit about Van Gogh.
Van Gogh was a painter that lived in the late 19th century. He had a short production. He was a torn painter that unfortunately passed away very young, but that had the ability and the capacity to produce a lot of good paintings in the short term that he did.
This exhibit uses about 45 projectors that play the content all over the walls and the floors of the hall. Stunning masterpieces such as the Starry Night, Sunflowers, and Cafe Terrace at Night can be seen at this exhibit.
To expect to be to really dive into the paintings. The experience is basically we're using projection mapping there's different arrays of projectors on floors, walls, and also monoliths, which are like structures. And then the idea is to create this universe to which you don't know where it begins and it ends. It's good for families, for kids. You should not be worried that it's like painting event and you need to know. I think the way that the the experience is designed is you first go into an education room where you read and you get to learn about Van Gogh, and then there's the waterfall to which is your first encounter with projection. So it's like a transition area that then leads you to the main exhibit.
Cinematic Van Gogh exhibitions have crossed the oceans from European cities to North America in the recent years. In a distinctive and unique multimedia artistic adventure using cutting-edge multi-dimensional projection technology developed by some of the world's greatest audio-visual designers and technicians. Beyond Van Gogh encompasses the same iconic flair, Van Gogh's vast body of work, with a very new twist unlike anything art lovers have seen before, using the artist's own dreams, thoughts, and words to drive an unmatched narrative experience. Van Gogh's exquisite work projected on walls invite guests to fully immerse themselves in his swirling and colorful flowers, cafes, and stunning landscapes.
In Calgary, Canada, Tiffany Alisasis, we live in interesting times.
Beautiful.
I want to visit that.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. We'll see you again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.